South African exporters are waiting with bated breath for the outcome of crucial trade talks currently underway in the U.S. capital of Washington. They're hoping South Africa will be included as a beneficiary once again when the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act is renewed in America later this year. AGOA, as it's termed, was implemented in earlier administrations to give several African countries preferential access to U.S. markets. South Africa has been included, and it's been a massive boost to trade. But now there are plans to exclude us. A high-powered government delegation accompanied by the South African Poultry Association arrived in the US last weekend and has already held talks with various influential people. They've just finished a meeting with two powerful senators who have threatened to block South Africa's inclusion in the new AGOA unless the country removes import duties on US poultry. Well, let's discuss now. We're joined on the line from Washington by our ambassador to the WTO, Faizel Ismail. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. How have the meetings gone?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I'm here in Washington leading a delegation of South Africa. We have had a number of discussions with a number of players in Congress. We've talked to the African ambassadors. We have started talking to the officials from the departments of agriculture here and the USTR. And this morning we've met with the two senators, Coons and Senator Isaacson, who have expressed their concerns about South Africa's poultry regime and their concern to try and get more exports into our markets.
Ambassador, were they digging their heels in? Were they open to what South Africa is saying? What does this all mean for our exporters who are obviously watching this very closely?
Yes, we believe that the discussions are on track to resolve any of the issues that the senators feel are an impediment for South Africa's inclusion in AGOA. We have talked to African ambassadors here. All of the African countries in Washington have expressed their full support for South Africa's inclusion in AGOA. I must say, having spoken to a number of players here who watch the Hill and politics in the U.S. very closely, there seems to be widespread support for South Africa's inclusion. However, I think everyone is a bit confused about what the real issues are in poultry. And we have assured the senators that we are doing our best to encourage our industry. We have a representative here of the South African poultry industry, SAPA, who is fully engaged and has met this morning again with his poultry counterparts here in the United States. Who, as you know, are strong in the state of Delaware, where Senator Coons is from. And we think that they have made quite a lot of progress and are fairly close to reaching agreement.
Well, Ambassador, maybe this gets to the heart of the issue, because there's talk that we are too developed to be included in this legal framework. But a lot of commentators saying that the issue is our tariffs on imports on chickens, and that's to protect our local poultry farmers. Are we willing to change our stance? Because what the US is saying is we can't give you free access if you're not willing to give us free access.
The problems with chicken, are fairly complex because the nature of the market is quite peculiar. In the United States, they seem to have a preference for what they call white meat, which is the chicken breast. And in South Africa and in much of Africa, we prefer the so-called brown meat, which is the chicken legs, or what we call drumsticks in South Africa. So what happens in the market is that in Europe, in the United States and Europe too, by the way, is that the chicken breasts sell at a premium price, and the drumsticks are considered as the surplus. And so this pattern of trade has meant that the products that was exported to South Africa was exported at the so-called dumped price. And it's for this reason that, our International Trade Administration authority here in Pretoria, did an investigation and found that the U.S. chicken was sold to South Africa at a dump price, and therefore imposed an anti-dumping duty to stem the tide of imports at this price. So this is the real issue. It has to do with the peculiarities of the market. However, notwithstanding this, we have been committed to find a way forward, and we're pleased that our poultry industry has been fully engaged with the U.S. poultry industry, talking about how we could find a solution. What they're talking about now are the number of tons of U.S. chicken that South Africa will allow into our market. And we are fairly close on the numbers. And I think that within the next few weeks, we should be able to find each other and find a compromise.
All right, so that's great, a compromise deal being looked at. Finally, Ambassador, just tell us how seriously this is being taken. Presumably, from what you've said, hopefully there will be a compromise. If there's not, huge implications for jobs in South Africa. The cars that are exported to the US duty-free, surely that's a big lure to car manufacturers here. Just tell us the implications if this is not renewed for South Africa.
Well, we have been urging both the US and others here in Washington to extend AGOA for another 15 years for Africa as a whole, because we believe that AGOA is in the mutual interest of both the United States and Africa. And we believe that AGOA has succeeded in helping to revive a number of industries on the continent, particularly the clothing and textile sector. And indeed, in our case, the auto sector has benefited. However, we believe that if these benefits are to be sustained, we need a further extension of AGOA for another 15 years. And South Africa has to be included for a number of reasons. Firstly, because South Africa also has a number of challenges, in its socio-economic development, like other countries. We did explain to them that at least half our people live below the poverty line. We also passed a customs union with Lesotho and Botswana and Namibia and Swaziland, and therefore any impact of the loss of AGOA to South Africa will be felt by all our neighbors. And we've also told them that one of the key reasons for South Africa to be included is because if the United States wants to help other African countries to develop their manufacturing sector, they should support South Africa's inclusion, because South Africa is playing a big role in driving the process of industrial development, not only in our own country, but across the region. We have played this role in clothing and textiles, where many of our component producers have moved out. And we are also beginning to do this in the auto sector, where we are building cooperation with a number of countries, principally with Nigeria, with whom we have built a partnership to see how we can, share our experience in the auto sector and begin to help Nigeria also build its auto industry. Right. So without South Africa, this will not happen. And therefore, South Africa should be, should continue to be in AGOA.
Well, hopefully that will fall on receiving ears in the United States. And AGOA is a word that we'll hear more frequently this year as those crucial talks are underway before it is extended, and South Africa's inclusion in that framework, that legal framework that gives us preferential access, hangs in the balance.